catching that last little bit of
Who
Holly's.
was I talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm,
What were we talking about?
maybe.
It is Monday. It is September 15th. To infuriate John Hawkinson, I will point out it is the Ides of September. Oh, and there is John Hawkinson anticipating my heresy. Um, uh, John, you want to preemptively respond?
Well, I was a moment late. Good morning, Ben. I just wanted to wish you, I hope your Saturday was a wonderful Ides of September because it is a hollow month.
Uh, It is 2 days past the Ides
Oh,
of September.
man.
It is the year of our Lord 2025. It is 8:01 a.m. And we have a special treat for you today on Dog Shirt TV. The estimable Mike Pesca is showing up to argue with Holly Berkley Fletcher about Charlie Kirk. And we are going to host a debate of sorts. I'm not sure
I
what the
don't think it's going to
param
be much of a debate.
I don't know what the parameters of it are going to be. But before we do that, because Mike is not here,
I
I
think
want
I already won because I was on time.
because
So
Mike defaulted. I want to say a word of um let's just say unironic and sincere thanks to our president. And, I don't do this very much because, frankly, I
you don't
loathe the
deserve it.
man. Um, and I write a column that is devoted to the uh, uh, cataloging and chronicling of the crisis that he has led us into. And I am unsentimental about it. I'm not looking for the good in his leadership. And yet sometimes you do trip over it walking down the street. And last week was such a week to me because the truth, honest truth of the matter is that I am convinced that Elizabeth Surkoff would not be free today but for the leadership of Donald Trump. And I have resisted talking about this because I wanted to make sure I was not just responding emotionally. Over the weekend, I had a lengthy text exchange with her sister, Emma, which you can read about in the Situation column yesterday, in which I share some details of the circumstances in which she was freed. And I have to say, that I think Trump's role was decisive, as was that of his hostage envoy, Adam Bowler. And that's uncomfortable for those of us who love to denounce the devil and all of his works. I will still denounce the devil and almost all of his works, but I do have to give them credit for this one. That is, close to my heart, and close to the heart of my family and people that I know and care about. And so, what are the lessons from this episode? And I think the lessons from this episode are threefold. Um, the first is that Trump's bullheadedly ignorant approach to dealing with problems, yes, it can be reckless and dangerous and heedless of important complexities. And if you go around like with if your only tool is a hammer, the saying goes, every problem looks like a nail. And the problem is you hit a lot of screws and you hit a lot of things that you should be dealing with a planer. But then every now and then you come across a nail. And it turned out this was a nail situation. And this was a situation in which you could cut through layers of bullshit that more sophisticated people were putting on top of a problem just by treating a nail like a nail. And, the Biden administration, which was full of Middle East experts, looked at the problem of these militias in Iraq and they saw a permanent feature of Iraqi politics that we had to recognize, and they looked at the coalition government of Iraq that included these factions, one of which was holding Elizabeth, and they saw, um, you know, factions that were like a normal parliamentary democracy's um, uh, uh, political constellations, and they saw Prime Minister Soudani as genuinely constrained by these actors. And, you know, they looked at Elizabeth and they said she's a non-U.S. citizen. It's not that we don't care, but we have 10 other things on our list higher. And so it repeatedly sort of expressed concern about the situation and did little else. And then Trump came along and he had a different way of looking at these gangs, which was that they were just criminals and they don't want to be blown up. And that gives you all kinds of leverage because you can blow them up and they know you can blow them up. And so what you do is you tell the Iraqi prime minister that, and you tell the Iraqi prime minister that it's on him to fix this problem because these are people in his government. And miraculously, she shows up at the U.S. Embassy 3 days after you issue, or a day or two after you issue an executive order that uh, makes the Iraqi prime minister fear that you're going to designate Iraq as a country that's living on kidnapping. And so, yeah, I want to say, unironically and with gratitude, job well done, President Trump. I'm not accompanied to saying this. I don't expect to say this often or maybe ever again. It doesn't mean I'm not going to uh, spend the rest of the show talking about something else and being critical. But on this one, oh, and one other thing about this was knowable in advance. And I know this not because of hindsight being 2020, but because I've spent a lot of time over the last year and a half with Elizabeth's sister, Emma. And Emma has been nothing but consistent about this, that the problem is that we're treating this like a political movement. It's a group of criminals, and all the leverage is by leaning on Prime Minister Soudani. And that is why she and I went with her other two siblings to the Willard Hotel when Soudani was staying there and projected Free Elizabeth Surkoff on it. It was because she believed that putting pressure on the Iraqi prime minister was the key. And she always said that this was doable this way. And then you have an administration that comes in, and whether it's because they believed her or because they're blunderbuss fools who, look for simple solutions to things, swept all the complexity off the table and just did it, and it worked. And so you have this nicely controlled experiment that you very rarely get. And on this one, they were right. And I want to give them credit for that. And I want to specifically give credit to this guy, Adam Bowler, who is Trump's hostage negotiator and seems like he may be the real deal. So that is the only praise you're going to get from me for the Trump administration this week or this month or maybe this year. But it is meant sincerely and without the slightest bit of um, uh, it's not a dagger that I'm slipping in and twisting. There's no, I just mean it seriously. This is one that they got right that the Biden administration did not get right. And the result is that somebody that I care about is not dead and is free and with her family. And so, every now and then the worst people you know make a good point, and this is one of those situations. All of which is a 10-minute long way of delaying the inevitable arrival of Mike Pesca. And, um, the sun is shining, Elizabeth is free, um, and the birds are chirping, and it's going to be a great frickin' day. And the cactuses have something to say to you.
You're watching Dog Shirt TV, a forking revolution in morning television.
You are watching Dog Shirt TV. And if the cactuses seem a little bit chaotic today, that's
You are
because
watching Dog Shirt TV, and if the cactuses seem a little...
it's a revolution in morning
That's
television.
right.
And one of the
Wow.
revolutionary features is that sometimes you come on the show fully expecting that we are going to do our usual bout of Trump bashing, and I end up giving a 11-minute long, after John Hawkinson comes in to correct me about Ides, an 11-minute long pay-in to Trump administration policy on an area, and you're waiting for the dig, you're waiting for it to turn ironic, and it never does, because I actually believe this shit. And another one of the revolutionary features, because there are many of them, is that sometimes the cactuses go rogue. And when Holly tries to get them to say their usual bit, one of them sings happy birthday, and another one just repeats a long winded speech of mine, because, folks, we are not allowed to have fun anymore. But whenever he shows up, we are allowed to have Mike Pesca in the red corner taking on Holly Berkley Fletcher in the blue corner over something related to Charlie Kirk. Holly, how are you and how was your weekend?
Good. It was good. Yesterday, I went to a Spanberger campaign. Saw Spanberger in the flesh, although did not hang around to actually meet her because there were a fair number of people there, and I needed to get my canvassing in before the Eagles game at 4:25. So I listened to her speech, which was very good. She's really impressive. I had not
Yeah,
seen
she's the
her.
real deal.
She has like a presence for real, like you can just tell some people have it, whatever it is. And she's a real deal. And she just has not only is she like has a charisma and a presence and is a great speaker, but she just yeah, her sort of vibe is reasonable, moderate, unifying. Like I think she's a good one. So I hope that she has a long future in politics. I'm talking about Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic candidate for governor of Virginia.
With
We
who
have
has a very interesting background. She
who
was
is
a
former CIA, like Holly. Ah!
former CIA, but on the operations side, not on the analytical side. She was a case officer,
Right.
and then ran for Congress as part of the class of 2018. Um, so she and Alyssa Slotkin are kind of the two kind of leading national security Dems who,
And Mikey Sherrill, I would say, who has
and
a
Mikey
bit of a
Sherrill,
military, more
although
military.
I think she's a little bit less distinguished as a little bit less prominent. I mean, she's going to be elected governor of New Jersey, and I don't mean to, but when I think of the sort of leading figures of particularly the 2018 class. Uh, she's a little bit lower down that list. But Abigail Spanberger has stepped away from Congress and is running for governor of Virginia, which is a weird governorship for two really important reasons. One is that it is like New Jersey, where Mikey Sherrill is running. It is an
5 year.
off-cycle election, and so it is the election that the statewide election that most closely follows every presidential election. And unlike New Jersey, it is a it's not a swing state exactly, but it's a state where both Republicans and Democrats can regularly win statewide, and so it's a closely watched state. The other reason it is an interesting thing is that it is a term-limited governorship to one term, which is, I think, unique in the country.
Yeah, I've never heard of another one like that.
It's been like that for, you know,
I know.
200 years.
Yeah, has it?
And and the result is that you get these extraordinarily talented people who've been governor of Virginia, and then assuming they don't get indicted, which has happened, of course, uh, they are young and they are term limited out. And so sometimes, as in the case of Virginia's two senators, they become senators, but sometimes they also run for president. And so you see with Abigail Spanberger, not a 2028 candidate, because you wouldn't run for president as a sitting governor of Virginia, but you could totally imagine her. She's young, and a successful governorship, having been CIA and a member of Congress, is a very nice package for purposes of a presidential candidate. So, yeah, she's definitely somebody to watch. She's also very talented and very smart, and an extremely good speaker. Yeah, keep an eye on Abigail Spanberger.
Yeah.
Um,
So that was good. And oh, the other thing is, so there's a reason why, like, she's a case officer and not an analyst. You don't see many analysts going into politics. There's a reason for
busy,
that.
busy staring at their shoes.
Yeah, there
Because you're the
that and
only
just,
extroverted analyst.
but also, like, I don't think I'd be a good candidate. Like, case officers have like a street smart, a multitasking ability. Um, and they're charismatic in like a leadership, in a different way than, like, I feel like maybe I'm just goofy. I don't know that I'm charismatic. But I'm goofy, and I don't think that's good in politics per se. Anyway, all that to say is I have no intentions or aspirations. I think I've said too many things in print, that would not do well for me in politics. I'm not going to go into politics. Let's just say that.
Well, I am not going to go into politics either,
Yeah.
for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Um, but not the least of which is that I live in the District of Columbia,
Mm.
which has no members of Congress except for a delegate, and no senators. And being the mayor of the District of Columbia seems like the worst job in the world.
Well, especially right now.
Yeah.
So,
So,
I
like,
mean, I have some sympathy for her. And I mean, people are bashing her for like caving, which, I mean, I get that, but also I have sympathy for her because she has no real power. Like, Trump could do much worse to the District of Columbia if
but
she
here's the other reason I will never go into politics. So I could never get elected to anything.
well,
So, and
on a
besides,
career. I think you could get
running would
elected.
be, no, I mean, come on, I can't keep my mouth shut. I would never, I would, I, I would.
Supposed to, I don't know. You could, if you wanted to like switch to the other side. They love people who can't keep their mouth
Oh, I
shut.
know, but I couldn't do that, and I
Yeah.
also couldn't. It would be so. I would be so tempted, confronted with a stupid question, to say, "Oh, that's a fucking stupid question." Don't you
Yeah.
know? Um,
Which is what Trump does all the time. But
yeah, but I'm not Trump, and so um, also, also to be an elected politician, you have to actually care about people, and um, like or at least you have to pretend, and
you do care. You and JVL both like have a you're like misanthropic curmudgeons, and yet you're both really good-hearted people who do care about people.
I mean, no, JVL, first of all, JVL has this whole, I never talk about it, not caring about people, but I don't want to have to pretend, go through a line of people and say, oh, my kid just graduated from blah, 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 and you have to like pretend to give a shit.
See,
No. Oh,
that's
that's
where I would
wonderful.
excel.
And then you have to remember the kid's name.
Because I'm not good at remembering details unless anymore, especially. But I have to say, like, I genuinely care about people. Like, I'm not just saying that. Even people that I think are on the side of evil right now. Like, I'm down doing my volunteer work with the Park Service, and like a MAGA family comes up, like confronted face to face with, like, I genuinely do care about them and
See,
their kids. So
this is like between the two of us, there's one good person because I would totally get into the kissing babies side and the
I
flirting
don't
with
like, yeah,
toddlers,
yeah.
and you don't like the babies. Um,
But I'll get down on the level with a 6-year-old and tell them about Dwight D. Eisenhower.
yeah,
I will do
exactly.
that.
But I would like once they're 10, I don't care about them at all.
Um,
And their parents, oh my God. Um, so
Well,
any
anyway, I mean, there's limits to my caring, but I'm just saying, like, confronted with, like, I'm a genuinely warm person. It's not an act. One thing about me, I will say, probably my defining character trait is I am 100% transparent. Like, I am not good at lying. I'm not good at faking. I am really transparent. And so I'm genuinely a warm person.
Okay, Lior raises an important issue, um, that I said that I will, that everybody gets one meeting, so it's not true that I don't like people. This is important thing. This is totally self-serving. I meet everybody once because there's a chance that I can exploit them. And, there's a chance that they're going to be, um, going to be Alan Rosenstein or Quinta Jurassic or
Or Holly
Annabelle
Berkeley
or
Fletcher,
Holly Berkeley Fletcher, who
who's
I
just
have
a
gotten to do
rising
to
star.
get up and do this show at 8 o'clock in the morning, uh, uncompensated for a long time now. Because why? Because, so look, if you're into the idea of mutual exploitation as, as the highest form of social interaction, yes, I like people for that.
I
Uh, um,
mean,
uh,
relationship is always a little, it's if it's mutual and like, I don't know, like there's a fine line between, I don't consider it exploitation if
the
like,
best kind of exploitation. The best kind of exploitation is if
that's an
you don't
even trade.
feel
That's
like you're
free
being
trade.
exploited for giving me free labor every morning by coming on the show.
Okay, but
And
it's
I don't feel
actually,
like I'm being exploited by sharing airtime with you for,
that's what I was
and
gonna say.
promoting your stuff. This is the best kind of exploitation there is.
I don't consider that's not, it's free trade is what it is. It's not exploitation.
Isn't all trade exploitation?
No, I don't think it's, if there's benefit, exploitation implies that it's just the power is completely on one side and there's no benefit accrued to the other side. And free trade is mutually beneficial. That's not exploitation. I
Well,
don't
I
think.
will tell you this, Holly Berkeley Fletcher. that I recently had a young person in my office, and and I made this person a very unusual, traditionally would be considered generous offer of help with something. And the person asked me, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Don't be silly, because I get all the benefit." And lawfare is built on exactly that premise, which is, if you find people who are capable of doing interesting work, you give them an extraordinary opportunity to do interesting work, and they think you're doing them a favor. And look, I have a database of 30,000 pieces of writing, um, often unique contributions to various fields, and um, I mostly didn't pay for it.
Yeah, yeah, but again, you're giving people opportunities, you're giving them platforms, you're giving them connections. I mean, it's there's I just yeah, I don't think it's exploitative. I think
Well,
it's
I
appreciative.
don't spoil my
Okay,
supervillain.
whatever. Okay, it's terrible.
Uh,
You're a terrible
I'm a
person.
terrible
You're
person. I
yes.
exploit people, and I only meet with people in order to exploit them. And this is my self-conception, and I'm sticking with it.
Well,
it's my
I think
thing.
it's I prefer people who think that they are horrible people than people who think they're really good people. So, I genuinely, because the people who think that they're horrible people are actually the good people. It's the people, trust me about this. It's the people who are enamored of their own good works that drive me freaking crazy and that cause so much damage in the world and in their relationships.
Meanwhile, we are being stood up by Mike Pesca,
I think
which
I win. I think I win the
I think
argument.
I think you win this debate
I think
by
just
default.
preemptively by default, yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um,
But you know what? I can already, so I went on and read like what he had written about, or at least in his Substack. So I mean, and also like I have argued with myself, which is a constant thing in my mind. So I can actually make his case and then I can counter it. I mean, and I'm still conflicted about it. His case is basically that it's not productive at this time to enumerate Charlie Kirk's many terrible deeds and words and to sort of trash his reputation or legacy at this time because he is being that feeds into the messaging on the other side. I think that's what his case would be. And I can see that point. I really can. And I don't believe in, there are certainly people I'm seeing out there who go overboard in this direction and into the realm of implying, at least sometimes saying outright, that he deserved what he got, or that he um I even gave some thought to he reaped what he sowed. Like he put out there divisive, hateful speech, and he stoked violence and excused violence, and he got violence. I decided ultimately that that was even too strong to say because he here's the thing. I would literally I would fight to the death for the right, Charlie Kirk's right to say what he believes out in the open without violence, right?
mhm.
But I also will fight to the death to counter non-violently everything that he is putting out there and represents. And to say clearly, and my right to say clearly that he is I think by his own words, he is a demonstrated racist and bigot, and he is a proponent of violence, and I think those are factual statements. I don't think um, that is spinning or degrading his reputation. I think you can just go to his actual words, which apparently many of the people I'm seeing just go on and on about how great he is, maybe don't even know. I read one post on social media, and it was just some random person. I don't know who it was, so apologies to this person. But they were saying they had a conversation with someone in their life, who was on the religious right, and the religious right person had, most of what they had heard of Charlie Kirk was not the bigoted stuff. They had been fed an edited version of Charlie Kirk in which he was, a decent Christian and a motivational speaker, et cetera, et cetera. And then and was surprised to hear some of Charlie Kirk's actual words about race and women and things like that. And then the other person who was not in the religious right, who was in the more liberal camp, was hearing good things that Charlie Kirk had said, and was also surprised. And the argument was that, even, with regards to Charlie Kirk's words, that there's edited versions on both sides. Although to me, like, the things he has said on the issues of race and violence and women, like, negates any other good thing he might have said. I'm sure Hitler said, I'm not saying Charlie Kirk is equivalent, but I'm just, as an example, I'm sure Hitler said some nice things in his life, not about
Yeah,
Jews,
but
but
I'm troubled by the idea that, I mean, what is the argument for not ventilating in an obituary context who the guy is? For whitewashing who the
because
guy.
it feeds like, we need to sort of take the temperature down, and it feeds the whole martyr narrative. It feeds the whole narrative that the left are like bloodthirsty, they're shitting on this poor, this father of small children, and et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know. I kind of just feel like you lean into complexity here. Murder is wrong. Murder
Yeah.
is bad.
Yeah, I don't think
Um,
it's an either or either.
Making a martyr out of somebody like Charlie Kirk is, whether he's going to be, the what the result of that will be is nothing good. Also, political violence, always bad. Um, and
Not only
yet,
is it bad, it really is an attack on all of us in a civilized society and our rights to free expression.
absolutely, and will blow back on us because they have more guns than we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also
And fewer
because
compunctions.
um, the forces that used to protect us don't anymore. See the FBI as the first exhibit A, but by no means the only exhibit. And so you can have all kinds of reasons why it's bad without having a um, without having uh, lionizing a person who was in fact a um, uh, racist, misogynist, white nationalist, um, uh, who intimidated a lot of people for a living. And I know professors
Oh, yeah.
who were, intimidated by him,
Yeah.
and his organization. So I don't really understand why this is all that complicated.
Well, if
It
Mike
just
Pesca ever
isn't.
comes on, you'll have to ask him.
It's not. It's fine to tell the truth.
Yeah, especially again in his own words, like, just literally just put his words out there. In the post I wrote, I had brief editorial intro language, but then I just put what he said. That's it. So I don't, we've already talked about this. So I don't, we can change the subject if Mike Pesca does not come on,
Well,
but it's
Mike Pesca just texted me that he's having computer trouble.
oh,
Um, and So, this is one of those situations where it can be, you can default a debate and it be no fault of your own. You get into the ring for the fight and then you roll your ankle, and it's not like you did anything wrong, or you wimped out of the fight or anything. But in the blue corner, Holly Berkley Fletcher has not rolled her ankle and it is laced up and ready to beat the shit out of Mike Pesca. But in the red corner, Mike Pesca is all laced up and the gloves are up and he's got the, but he's rolled his ankle and he's writhing on the floor in pain. And that can be a big sporting events can be decided on that basis.
All right. Well, I don't win many debates or arguments because I don't really relish them particularly. And so I'm not a big fighter. So I take the win gratefully.
Bum 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 bum
I'm
bum
even
bum
wearing
bum
my
bum.
Phillies shirt.
Yeah,
Fly.
there you go.
The Eagles won last night. Very exciting. And I'm wearing my fly and I'll do my Rocky.
Yeah.
So
Um.
yeah.
Wait. We gotta. Uh. Oh, I don't know why this isn't working. Oh, yeah. Here we go. There we go. Um.
Cool.
I don't use the sound effects very often, but
Well, it's complicated. We already have talking cacti, and yeah. So,
I
oh,
do have.
very
I
exciting
do.
news I just got today. My episode of the Mona Charon Show podcast, an official Bulwark podcast that I taped a few weeks ago, it will be live at 11 a.m. So, if you usually listen to Mona Charon's show, which is excellent, you can listen. If you don't usually listen to Mona Charon's show, you can listen. I don't know that I will listen. I don't like reviewing my performance later. It gets
Well,
me.
I will just say I listen to Mona Charon's show every week, every single week,
Yep,
and
me too.
but I
Although I missed
usually
last.
listen to it about 3 weeks late because my podcast queue is really long. It's kind of the same as Mike Pesca's show. I always listen to Mike, but I'm usually about 3 weeks behind. I have an important announcement to make. We
What?
have 38 people on the show right now live,
Wow, is that a
and
record?
that is the record. We have never had 38 before.
What do we account for this?
We've never breached 40. Um, and it used to be that we never breached 30.
Oh, there
Hello,
he
Mike
is.
Pesca.
We've already had the debate. I
Yeah.
represented your side and then I counted it. So,
Okay. Who won?
Holly won. It was
well,
really
Ben
one of
said
those
I won.
default situations where you didn't show up.
I'm
So she
not
kicked
sure
your
I'm
ass.
not sure I won, but because I argued I argue extensively with myself on this same point. So,
Well, I just wanted some self-reflection, so that's all I was going for. This was all by design that I didn't show up, just
oh,
to
I'm
thrust you
nothing if
into a
not
point.
self-reflective, Mike Pesca.
All
I'm
right,
like
Mike, make the case that
neurotically
Holly and
self-reflective.
I are being too hard on Charlie Kirk's memory.
No, that wasn't exactly my case. My case was 2 days after, I think this was Friday, right? So it was maybe 2 days after he was shot. I had thought that the best course of action would be not to retrench to our usual corners. And the imperative shouldn't necessarily be, well, I don't want to say necessarily, I want to be exact. The imperative shouldn't have been what we would have expected if, say, Charlie Kirk was in the news for other reasons. Oh, you've never heard of Charlie Kirk? From a left, liberal, center left perspective, whatever you want to say, here is a litany, a rundown of all the bad things that Charlie Kirk said. Most of them accurately, portrayed, some of them a little bit stepped on and not quite given full context. Most of them relied on by Media Matters since they monitor him and they monitor right-wing guys. What does it do? What does it do? It doesn't de-escalate, right? It doesn't elevate. So in that time, I was saying, I would correct anyone who's saying anything inaccurate. But in that time, I don't think the best thing to do is to say, here's all the bad things Charlie Kirk did, especially when you kind of mischaracterize some or you get some wrong, and not even necessarily you, but other people were certainly getting a lot of the things he said wrong. Why? Why were we doing this? I think it's because of the tribalism. I think it's because of the need to um, appeal to our people and our base and our mindset and our tribe. And I just think a little bit of exhaling would have been a lot better in that situation. And then the problem with that, I guess the difficulty with that is there'd be some sources who are saying things that you'd be clenching your teeth and saying, no, this can't stand. I can't have it so that people watching an NFL game think that he was purely for the good. But for a couple of days, for less of the partisan fighting and bickering and no, you said this wrong thing. I can't believe they said this to Charlie Kirk's memory. It would have been better for each side to, I'll say the word de-escalate. The last point is, on my show, I was talking about the only way to really change things these days is for people on one's own side to change. And that's why I'm so glad Spencer Cox is the governor there, because he's a leader who's been on my show. He's a leader in trying to get out of the ideological silos. And I can't really talk to the right. I don't have many like Charlie Kirk right wing listeners in my audience, but I do have some left people in my audience. And I think we're kind of on the same ideological spectrum, you and I, this show and I. And my goal was to do something different than what that did, especially you saying Charlie Kirk was a terrible person. Originally, you knew you shouldn't have said that and you backed off that. Then later on the show, you said he's a terrible person. I think you criticized his Christianity. It just wasn't, I think, what
Totally
should have been
fair.
said.
It's totally fair.
It might have been fair, but
Well,
we
wait
have
a
to
minute.
decide, is this the
I
best thing we
wanna,
should be doing?
if Holly's not gonna, rise up and in the blue corner and lace on her gloves and fight back, I wanna. So that would be a totally valid critique, it seems to me, um, if the general tone of the conversation had been, um, you know, this guy was shot, everybody's very sad about it, and all of a sudden, and everybody's merely expressing sympathy and shock at the shooting, and then Holly comes out of left field uh, and and shits on the guy's legacy. Um, but that is not the environment in which we were speaking. The environment in which we were speaking is an environment in which um, the guy is shot, um, and there is an immediate campaign of intimidation of uh,
It's
the
true.
left generally. People are, you know, people are fired from jobs for saying things that are uh, mildly, if not even celebratory, but Christian, but sort of chickens coming home to roost kind of stuff. Um, there is a deliberate campaign of collecting professors saying stuff to get people fired. Um, and it seems to me in that environment, standing up for the principle that, hey, wait a minute, it's important to be able to talk about who this guy was, and to be able to talk about it honestly and plainly and uh, without being cowed by the Dinesh D'Souza's and frankly Donald Trumps of the world. Stephen Miller is on television. We're going to go after people. So, why in that context is it not appropriate to say we will uh, we will be candid about A, that shooting people is always bad, but B, we're not going to sugarcoat who this guy was.
I will just add on and speak on my own behalf. Also, Mike, so first of all, Mike, globally, I totally actually agree with your point, and before, certainly before I spoke, or certainly before I wrote my post on Substack, I even in the post, I wrestled with this tension that you're talking about. However, I think an additional context for myself and for Richard, he chimed in and made this point too, because he and I are in the same boat, is that I am a Christian, and like a real one. Like I'm a practicing church attending Christian. I was raised in the world of Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk has always claimed to speak for me and for my faith. And I'm looking at many people, in the wake of his death, claiming his version of Christianity to be the correct one. And I'm sorry, I feel an obligation as a Christian to speak out against what he put out in the world. It's like, again, this is a hyperbolic analogy, and I don't mean to imply Charlie Kirk is a terrorist, but it is kind of what it kind of is similar to the calls after 9/11 and in the wake of Al Qaeda attacks for moderate Muslims to speak out against radical Islam, and criticism by people outside their faith of failing to do this. And so that is always in my mind. I do not. I am grieved beyond grieved of what my faith is doing in America right now. I think it is. I think a form of American Christianity is literally the number one enemy to democracy right now. And as a Christian, I feel compelled to, and frankly, and the last point I'll make is, frankly, a lot of these people, as I said before you came on to Ben, who think that they love Charlie Kirk because that's just the air that they breathe and the waters they swim in. They actually were not aware of what some of the things he was saying, and have expressed surprise to hear that he literally was a proponent of the great replacement theory. His own words, and I checked all the clips that I cited, by the way. I wanted to make sure they weren't being mischaracterized before I cited them. And so I did check the clips. I agree some of them have been presented without proper context. But I mean, it's bad. It is, his views on race in particular are really, really bad.
Okay, so I'm hearing you and I'm reading what is said in the comments, and I wouldn't expect much different. I wouldn't have said anything or thought of anything except that early on you said, I'm not here to say he's a horrible person. I don't know his soul. And then you went on and worked yourself into a bit of a lather, a justified lather. And then you just started saying, this is a terrible person. And I said to myself, this is not the rhetoric we should be engaging in. I'm never in
And I
favor
would
of not.
agree. If I did, I don't recall doing that, but I would agree that if I got myself into that place, like that is, I don't, I regret that.
Yeah, you said he's not a Christian and is a horrible person. So
Okay, I
that
don't,
was an uncorrected statement. And then
I
later on
don't
at
think he,
1552, you said, I don't call them conservatives, I call them fascists. And so on my show, I've been talking about, I think the great sin of the
I didn't
left
say that
has.
though.
Okay, well, I think that definitely contributes to, that's fine for you to think it, but
What is fascism? I don't like
it's
the way,
not. Yeah, go ahead.
like, I mean, this is not just with regard to Charlie Kirk, but I think this is a broader question. Actually, the Secret Pod, Sarah Longwell and JVL, if you listen to the Bulwark Secret Pod, this is what they talked about on Friday. It's behind their paywall, but nonetheless, and this is what they're constantly wrestling with. Here's the thing: if the parameter, this is not, we are no longer in a two-party, normal political debate parameter. Like, we are literally confronting something that by historical definitions is an authoritarian movement. And so
Yeah, I
how
agree
do,
with the fact that it's authoritarian, and there is a leap to fascism, and the fascism label really doesn't resonate with the electorate. And the fascism label definitely makes people who aren't fascists on the right gets their back up, and that's the most escalatory word in all of this, I think. But go ahead.
well, I don't think people who, I don't people understand what fascism historically has meant. And I think I, but fair enough. It's not a helpful word in this moment. I'll grant you that.
Is Orban a
But
fascist historically?
huh?
Is Orban a fascist?
I would say so. Yeah.
I don't know that most people in America would say what Viktor Orban has done. You could debate it, but is it worth, say, political killings to forestall it? George Conway, in many of his blue sky tweets, and I don't know if he was on that show, he tweeted just a picture of what's his name, Horst,
Horst Wessel.
yes, Horst Wessel, who was turned into a martyr, who by the Nazis after he was killed by communists in 1930, I think, in Germany. And to me, I don't know, that ambiguous post said the killing of fascists has a history. He was likening Charlie Kirk to this literal Nazi. And I'm not going to say advocating, but just something that happened in history. But why did George Conway put it out? Again, I said to myself, if someone wanted to make a big post reading into what George Conway said, they'd be able to, and it wouldn't be good. And if someone stripped Holly's comments pretty accurately, more accurately than a lot of Charlie Kirk's comments were stripped and mined for outrage, it would be bad and it would escalate things. And the only reason it's not bad is we're kind of talking to ourselves, as
So if
everyone on
the
Blue Sky
truth
thinks it
isn't,
is.
again, here's the problem. The truth is inflammatory right now. Like, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy for real. Like, he's
Yeah, so
literally,
what, right. So, like, in the day after his assassination, how important was it to say that?
Okay, but
Or his
first of all,
assassination attempt?
matter of historical correction. Um, the I think, Mike, you are misinterpreting the Horst Wessel analogy. Um, Horst Wessel became, he was just a low grade SA thug, and
Right.
Hitler decided to make him into a martyr who became a symbol of the movement. And there was a song called the Horst Wessel song, um, uh, which was sort of a theme song or a fight song of the Nazi Party, at least at the youth levels. And I think I interpreted George's point as you kill low grade thugs and they become important symbolic martyrs. It wasn't a and I actually think it's a bad analogy because Charlie Kirk was not a low grade thug. He was a major theoretician of, or I don't know, a propagandist of the movement, whereas Horst Wessel was
Right,
a
right.
nobody street fighter. But I think his point
Yeah.
was don't martyr people.
Oh, I don't know that that was his point. I think it was whatever his point was, don't martyr people. Whatever his point was there is definitely comparing Charlie Kirk to a Nazi, which I don't think
Yeah.
helped. To go back, in general, this wasn't mostly about you, but the days after, the seconds after it happened, I got one of the quotes that you put in your Substack was sent to me or relayed to me either
well, first of all, I
publicly
didn't put
or through
anything on
different friends.
Substack for like a day or so. So
Yeah. So one of the big quotes, Charlie Kirk was killed, and it was the quote about gun control. It was, we need to accept Yeah, it's worth it to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our God-given rights. Listen, I don't know if they would think it out that far, but everyone who supports the Second Amendment, that's only a logical consequence of thinking that, right? Just like everyone who has a car must, if they really thought about it, say that about car deaths in order to have this car. So this guy was killed by a gun, and immediately it struck me that friends of mine who aren't public debaters thought that this was some really good point. And the phrase, and I've talked about this a lot, fuck around and find out, was the phrase that struck me. And I said, wow,
Well,
that's really bad. And then there were a bunch of other quotes, and you didn't mind these. But the other biggest quote that I kept seeing was he advocated for the stoning of gay people. I'm like, holy cow. And I looked
no,
into that. And
watched that whole clip, and that's why I didn't put it in there.
right. So that's a total
Wait, so what did?
misrepresentation.
So just for my information, because what did he? What's
Yeah.
wrong with that formulation
Sure.
of the clip?
Right. So what happened was he was commenting on something that Miss Rachel, the kitty influencer, said, and she had quoted "Love thy neighbor," and I forgot if it was in the context of immigration law or what law it was. She said "Love thy neighbor," and Charlie said essentially, if you want to quote Leviticus, you could also quote another section of Leviticus, which says, "A man who layeth down with a man shall be stoned." You know, the even the devil can quote scripture for his purpose idea. And so he wasn't saying to stone gay people, he was saying what he was saying. And there was another quote that was widely circulated about him bailing out Paul Pelosi's attacker, which was more or less a shoe on the other foot piece of rhetoric where he said Chicago doesn't have cash bail, San Francisco does. There's all these questions about why this attacker of Paul Pelosi actually attacked him. If someone were to bail him out, we could ask the guy questions. So, you know, he is a bunch of things, and I think the most important to the movement is he registered a lot of young Republicans. And in his public debate performances, he actually, and you were making an interesting point, Ben, is debate even a virtue? I think in this day and age, it is compared to the opposite. And in his debate performances, he did a lot of meeting, maybe just for rhetorical purposes, a lot of meeting people where they were. And even you should listen to, there are a couple of quotes going around, clips going around of the kid who was asking the question. He's a young guy asking the question when Kirk was assassinated. And he's I guess you would say either a trans activist or someone who just thought Kirk was wrong on the trans issues. But he has a lot of really good insight about the value, and he doesn't praise Kirk at all, but he saw real value in the debate aspect of it. But the third thing he is a talk show host, a right-wing talk show host. And I've listened to not hundreds, but I've listened to dozens and dozens of hours of Charlie Kirk and other right-wing talk show hosts. And I would put him on a continuum of somewhere smack dab where an average Republican who wants to hear a talk show is. And I would put people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon, who's much more important to the conservative movement, and Alex Jones, way, way, way out there. And so I just always thought of Charlie Kirk as a not particularly skilled garden variety talk show host who says a bunch of things in a way that would appeal to the median Republican right now, who, if you look at his litany of things he said, you know, he's against affirmative action. He's going to say that in the most incendiary way. If you're against affirmative action, you take prominent black people who you're going to say aren't very smart, who got into schools because he asserts they're not very smart. It's not something we'd like to hear, but this guy was killed and he said all these racist things. I just said, yeah, I guess you can make the case. I'm not going to defend those statements or Charlie Kirk for not saying racist, but really, is this really the best use of, I don't like the best use. Is this really, of all our incentives of what we should be doing, is this the best presentation of where we are in the moment? I think the center left can actually have some de-escalatory rhetoric, and especially he was a horrible person and a bad Christian got to me.
Well, he is a bad Christian. I think that's just a factual.
That I think is extremely debatable because I don't believe in Christianity at all. So,
Well, then I don't think it's your call to
Yeah,
say
then
that.
then you don't have a dog in the fight.
I'm a Christian,
well,
and he was a bad Christian. I'm not going to say he
and then
wasn't
if he
a
says,
Christian.
but then
He was
if
a
he
bad
disagrees with,
Christian.
if he disagrees with your
No, he
interpretation of the
is misrepresenting the fundamental tenets of the faith. That is a bad Christian. So
in terms of
I'm not going to give
his, I don't.
I'm not going to give you this one because I am a Christian and you are not a Christian, and so I don't
Well,
think
I
that.
could say I'm a Christian. I was raised, pretty Catholic, and there are
Well, Charlie
elements of
Kirk would not
theology
think
that
that was a
everyone.
Christian. So
Well,
It doesn't matter. I don't
I,
put my
I'm going to
stake in
put my
Charlie
I'm going to put
Kirk.
my I'm
Like
going to put my
2
foot
days
down on
after.
this one because it's 9 o'clock and we have to wrap. I will just say that I do think that just as conservative Christians are allowed to make theological arguments about the nature of Christianity and routinely do, and routinely dismiss people like Holly
Ooh.
as
I'm going to
um,
hell. So
uh,
according to
as
him,
not
maybe I
saved or
am.
not. I mean, she's just allowed to have her theological beliefs about what constitutes good Christianity and what doesn't. Um, I am going to declare an end to this because we have to wrap. Mike Pesca, you are a great American. And anytime you want to come on Dogshirt TV and criticize our coverage and discussion, you are very welcome. Holly, you are also a great American. And I would like to say that I personally had no problem with anything that Holly said, save perhaps the he was a horrible person, which I think is a perfectly reasonable summary of the quotes that Holly quoted, but perhaps does not encompass the entirety of his being, which, he may be a wonderful father, he may be a kind individual, but I do think, as a summary of his public statements on a certain set of subjects, it does not especially trouble me. Um, Folks, we're going to be back tomorrow. It's going to be fabulous. I have no idea what it's going to be about or who's going to be here, but I'll see you then.